So I'm live here talking about October 2019 Vedic Astrology forecast. So what I usually do is I go through day by day and I move the moon around the zodiac and go through each day. But for this, I'm going to actually just look at more shifts and planetary shifts and transits, and look at it more that way because there's some big shifts ahead with planets changing signs and things like that are going on. When we look at the chart here, you see that we have. One second. You see, as we start, I'm actually recording this on October the 2nd, but you can see that Venus here is right at the edge. Venus is about to go into Libra. 1 second. So you see Venus goes into Libra on the 3rd or the 4th. So we're going to have a shift of Venus out of debilitation going into Libra, where she'll be for several, for about 3 weeks or so. Venus will be in Libra for much of October until the October 27th. So for much of October, it's going to be good for relationships, connecting with your partners, things like diplomacy, civility. Hopefully we can see some of that. Hopefully we can, connect and compromise with each other and spend some real quality evaluation of how we communicate with each other, how well we listen to each other's points of view, how much we respect the efforts that others make, to get along with us. Venus has been pretty hammered for the last couple months. I talked about this a couple months ago when Venus went through, even when it was still in Cancer. A couple months ago, those of you who watch my forecast remember way back then when I said Venus is going to be combust, it's going to be join Mars, it's going to be debilitated. Go back and watch those videos. So we're coming out of that, right? We're coming out of that, and that's good. So Venus in her own sign of Libra is quite, quite beneficial. And so that will be going on from early October, like October 3rd or so, till about the 27th. So for much of October, we'll enjoy a nice Venus in Libra. For much of that time, it'll also be joined Mercury. Let's go forward here and see. It'll be joined Mercury for much of that time as well. And then there's going to be a pileup of planets in Scorpio around the end of the month, which I want to talk about as well. This is where we're going to start to see more of these shifts taking place around the end of October. We're going to see quite a few of these planets. We'll wind up with Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter all in Scorpio. Now, when Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter join, brings together these 3 planets, it's actually a makeshift Saraswati yoga. It brings in the qualities of Saraswati, who is the goddess of creativity. And this goddess of creativity is, it happens when Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury come together. And so, of course, creativity is shown. Let me just move this forward, just let you see. So we see it here. This is at the end of October, October 28th. Jupiter, Venus, Mercury in Scorpio shows a time where there will be a focus on being creative, on being, not just as it relates to art and music and other kinds of things like that, but also creative in the sense of, spirituality, spiritually creative, and intelligence and wisdom. Those 3 planets are the ones that bring skill, which is Mercury, intelligence, which is Mercury, the love of beauty and aesthetic, and connection with other people, which is Venus, and higher wisdom and teachings and gurus and sattvic purity, pure teachings, which is Jupiter. So these qualities of Jupiter's pure, purity and sattvic nature, to aspire to the good and the highest, as well as Mercury's skill, intelligence, flexibility, speech, and Venus' love of accommodation and other people and engagement, is going to be quite nice at the end of October, and then into November. As you see, we go forward. Mercury and Venus will be there with Jupiter. Then Jupiter is going to move into Sagittarius in early November, but we'll save that for November. So I'm kind of hitting some of these spots right now in October because, one second here, because we have, right now we're at this place here where there's quite a bit of, go back here. At the beginning of October, we have the Saturn Ketu is still very close in the sky. So right now, this is why we're feeling so much of this intense, energy, where people are, where we're so focused and concentrated on these sort of principles and teachings and righteousness. Again, Saturn Ketu in Sagittarius, very pressure-filled, and Saturn is bringing this stress and this relentless focus that's trying to crush and destroy something that's not time-tested and legitimate and valid. Ketu is also there, again, showing the flaws and the mistakes. And they're in Sagittarius, again, which is about what's inspiring us, what's inspiring you. Now, again, we can see this in political situations all around the world. We definitely see it in the U.S. with the recent politics, with the president, and with this thing that's blown up, where we're seeing things like corruption and seeing the real truth, the painful truth, that shattering maybe our beliefs and illusions around things, definitely coming out now. We see it again in politics all around the world. Of course, in Brexit, in England, we see there's a lot of shifting and transformation around, in Russia, China, Hong Kong situation, also in India, all around the world. We're seeing shifting tides, of course, Iran and Saudi Arabia, ideologies being pressured, institutions being pressured, and the things that we believe about them as well being brought into question. So again, this is where we're really starting from here at the beginning of October. And we see that with Saturn Ketu so close together here in Sagittarius right at the beginning of the month. So if we move this forward, you'll see Saturn is now separating from Ketu. So they're still very close, but you see here Ketu, this is even one day. Ketu is 1905, Saturn is 20. Again, they'll stay around 1904, 2002. They're still going to be within this 1 degree for most of the month. So you see here now they're about 2 degrees on October 12th. So because they're moving opposite each other, one's going this way, one's going that way. So by the end of the month, they'll separate more. And what it means is that the kind of fracture that we've seen, and I am going to just draw the line with the situation in the U.S. politics, with the impeachment and the revelation, the sudden shocking revelations of what's been happening behind the scenes. That happened as Saturn Ketu were exactly stationed in Sagittarius. Again, that's the kind of cataclysmic event that happened right when those two things were exact, after this build-up back and forth. The events that brought forth those calls and all that stuff was happening over the summer when those planets were coming together, all of the meetings behind the scenes and all that. Now you have this, they'll start to move further away from each other, and Ketu will continue to go through Sagittarius in one way, moving toward Scorpio, and Saturn toward Capricorn, separating. But what's happening on the other end is, as Ketu is moving back toward Scorpio, Jupiter is moving from Scorpio toward Ketu and Sagittarius. So they're going to come together early next year. But by the end of this year, Jupiter is going to be in Sagittarius and really restore quite a bit of justice. We're going to see a lot of justice. Now, again, it's going to be hard because a lot of people don't like the truth. A lot of people don't want to see justice. But we're going to see it. It'll be there, and that'll be the potential. One second. Excuse me. And so here in October, though, we can expect to see this tightening and this pressure of Saturn continuing to move through Sagittarius and Ketu also moving through Sagittarius, revealing a deeper level of hidden information, beliefs, structures. Now, again, one of the things, I'll just talk a little bit politics here, not so much, but one of the things that's been happening, the backstory has been that there's been secretive sort of campaign. It's actually not been that secret with Attorney General of the U.S. going around to all these countries trying to reinstigate the story to sort of overturn the Russia investigation story, that it was actually the deep state investigating Trump that was the big crime. Meanwhile, again, so you see these dual narratives playing out. So most people think that the real issue that's been happening, let's just say with what's been happening with U.S. Politics, is that you have this pressure and this kind of secret pressure that's been exerted, and these calls that have been hidden away and not been shared. That's the sort of travesty. But you have a very small percentage of people that believe in this, I guess you want to call it a conspiracy theory idea of this Spygate, that what really happened was it was the deep state going after Trump. We have an attorney general and people in the government that are going around to other government leaders trying to get them to give dirt on the U.S. intelligence services and how they conducted what they're calling Spygate thing. So this is an alternative reality that's going on that some also believe. I'm just pointing this out again. I'm not trying to turn this into a big political thing, but I'm trying to show the two different levels of it's Saturn, Ketu, and Sagittarius. Again, Sagittarius is just what we believe. There are people who believe that. There are people who believe that story, that it's just, Trump has been abused and mistreated, and it's all a deep state conspiracy against him. And literally the fact that his presidency and his Justice Department and all are going to world leaders trying to get them to give the dirt on our intelligence, that's what should be happening, that's the real thing. Most of the rest of us say, no, that's not the way it is. And all of this corruption that we're seeing is legitimate. So these are two narratives, at least in the political realm. I'm not going to keep talking politics here, but I'm just letting you see, if you're watching these things that are happening, that's the U.S. version. But there are different versions of this all around the world. Of course, in England, there's all the Brexit stuff that's going on with their competing. In fact, I saw today, they got sucked up in this as well. I think it was Boris Johnson's official had to come out and say, no, we're not working with the U.S. government to get involved with their politics. Ukraine is saying we're not involved in their politics. Russia is saying we're not involved in their politics. Everybody's trying to distance themselves from this U.S. scandal that's happening. So again, Saturn, Ketu, and Sagittarius is now really, as the two planets separate, Saturn is going to continue through Capricorn, which is about consequences, and 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 the sort of destruction and the focus and the commitment that comes after the hope, again, because Sagittarius is like the hope of your beliefs. Capricorn is the commitment to put them into practice. So Saturn going through Capricorn, Saturn going through Sagittarius tends to say, okay, what are you willing to focus on? What's the truth behind all of your beliefs? That's just Saturn and Sagittarius. Ketu joining it, which we've been seeing this year, is taking that pressure on your beliefs and drilling down into it like a jackhammer, saying, oh, you believe this? Okay, now there's going to be enormous pressure on what you believe. And you're going to have to question what you believe, right? So as Saturn goes into Capricorn next year, there's going to be more consequences around all of that, which could show some penalties and some verdicts, in addition to Jupiter coming and joining Ketu in Sagittarius by this time next month, month and a half, by this time in early November and then middle November, Jupiter will be in Sagittarius, and things could look very different at that point, and there's going to be a sense of justice. And so very interesting stuff in that regard. Now, the other things that I wanted to point out here is, as you see right here, the sun goes into Libra, where it's going to be debilitated in the middle of September, and this this sun in Libra is in its debilitated sign, and so again, when the sun is debilitated in Libra, it shows where we're more given to compromise and a sense of community, even in our relationships and things like that. This is it's where our personal individual power, and the power to get out there and step up and shine brightly is less, feels less, important. And we're actually more about wanting to get along with others. So from the middle of October 17th, and then to the end of October, we will be feeling that sort of lower energy, that may even come out in the, in a sense of like slow digestion, slow, slow, physical vitality, where we're not as energetic. So notice that in the middle of September, where, your energy isn't as high. Now, again, of course, as you see, Venus and Mercury are also there. It's a good month for those things, for those creative endeavors, and a sense of speech, a sense of beauty, especially as it revolves around speech, communication, creative projects, will be quite good in October. Then, as I said, the end of October, we wind up with Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury in Scorpio, bringing that Saraswati yoga, which is also good for the creativity, especially the spiritual, development, things like writing. And, again, if you're involved in anything like music or other kinds of creativity, that could be quite rewarding in September. A couple other things I wanted to show is, you can see there's going to be this planetary aspect between, or I'm sorry, it's a mutual aspect between Saturn and Mars. It's very important. With Saturn and Mars casting these aspects, you can see as Mars gets closer to 20, especially around the end, around this time, this is October 24th. Again, Saturn casts a one-way aspect on the 3rd house in front and the 10th house, and Mars casts an aspect on the 4th and the 8th house. So anytime Saturn is 4 signs in front of Mars, eventually they're going to hit a mutual one-way aspect. That sounds like a contradiction, mutual one-way. It means they're both casting their one-way aspects. And it's going to happen here October 24th, and they're quite important. You could see, like, I'd say from October 20th until around the end of the month, October 20th until like 27, 28, that week of October 20th to the 27th, 28th could be quite explosive. And again, there could be some, that could literally be what you might consider or what you might call things that are literally explosive, like things exploding. It could also just be things like a kind of destructive act, or even things like an economic event. Again, this will be happening with Mars in Virgo and Saturn in Sagittarius. People have asked me before, this all plays out in the U.S. chart as well, and people use that Sagittarius ascendant for the U.S. chart. I don't use that chart, so I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just I haven't researched it well enough. And one thing that I do believe, I've always had a sense that the chart is Leo, that the ascendant is actually Leo for the U.S. chart, and it was affirmed when I saw it's actually in the documented record that the Declaration of Independence was actually signed around 10 a.m. rather, on July 4th, 1776, and that Sagittarius chart winds up being around 6 p.m. I'm not sure where that came from. I know who the astrologer, it's attributed to this Vedic astrologer, which, again, I don't know where it came from, but I don't think 6 p.m. is really the time. So anyway, without going in the weeds there, just to answer a question, because people will ask me, I kind of get it a lot. Well, there's also the U.S. chart, and that Saturn Ketu is in the first house. That's not reliable as far as I'm concerned. One day I might rectify it, but I don't really care to do it that much. I think it was around 10 a.m. There's even documents of that. So that's an aside if you had the question. But regardless, Mars putting this mutual one-way aspects on Saturn could show that week of October 20th until October like 27th or something like that could be very, very transformative, destructive. And again, I'm talking about not just worldly events, but where does this show up in your life? And again, this also would include, what does Mars and Saturn rule in your chart? Where do these signs of Virgo and Sagittarius fall? Notice this, October 20th through the 27th. Like for me as Gemini, Mars will be in my 4th house. Saturn is in the 7th house. So this kind of thing, maybe, some kind of issue around my home with someone else or whatever, or who knows? Watch out for burglars, which would be hard to happen here in my condo. But if not that, maybe I'm thinking of having some work done in the house. Maybe I'll not have it around that time. So notice these things, and also just the rulers, and also just the stress level of that mutual aspect of Saturn-Mars, October 20th through the 27th. And again, also at that time, you'll see we're going to be having the moon here. This is on the 29th. This is shortly after. Oh, by the way, I'm glad I remembered this. This is also, for instance, on this day, on this new moon, on October 27th, this new moon is going to be Diwali. So this new moon, with the new moon in Libra, this is the Diwali celebration, the festival of light. And this festival of light comes on like the darkest day, on some of the darkest times, when the sun and moon are both pretty dark, which means the sun is debilitated and the moon is almost debilitated. The moon is in it's extremely dark because it's a new moon, so it's very dark, and it's almost debilitated because its debilitated sign is Scorpio. So on that day we have Diwali, which is the celebration of light, and it's like an Indian New Year. So this could be a pretty intense day in that sense. You'll see this Mars-Saturn will be a mutual aspect. There'll be a new moon, but we also have this aforementioned Saraswati Yoga configuration, Jupiter, Mercury, Venus in Scorpio. So again, the literal Saraswati Yoga would be if it falls in angles. So if it's a Scorpio, Aquarius, Taurus, or Leo. But I talk about the configuration in the sky because it brings together those three players. We're not talking about a natal chart. But it's a very creative time. So this could be a deeply spiritual time. It always is on the Diwali, because this new moon being so dark and close to debilitation, it's a dark time. That's why we celebrate intentionally the return of the light. I'll do an update as we get closer to that. But this will be happening within that backdrop of the Mars-Saturn. So, a few other things just to mention is that as we go through that this month of October is, again, Rahu works its way further into further into Ardra, excuse me. Rahu works its way further into Ardra. So we could expect some, pretty intense times with Rahu going through Ardra, around the end of, the last day, Halloween, October 31st. You see, we have, the moon very close to Saturn, Ketu, again in Sagittarius. So again, we're talking about some pretty intense energy here that is, that is coming up for us. But again, we should also realize there's a lot of grace with Jupiter moving forward through Scorpio. And when Mercury, Venus go and join, especially around the end of the month, we'll go back here. Again, we'll wind up with that Jupiter, Mercury, Venus. Venus winds up joining. That's October 27, then 28, 29. Even before, when we get Mercury, Jupiter here, the 22nd, that's going to bring a lot of this intense focus. And of course, before that, Mercury, Jupiter are in Libra. So, Mercury, Venus are in Libra. So Mercury, Venus are quite powerful and pretty tight throughout the month. Being in Libra and then going in Scorpio with Jupiter. Good time to really feel and connect with information, data, studying. Great for students, great for learning astrology, using your brain, actually literally using your brain, not just triggered and, defending what you already believe and backed into a corner and trying to win and all that stuff. But really being able to think your way through things and connect with higher wisdom. I will also say that probably the most, of course, the sun will be in its debilitated sign from the 17th, so for about half the month. And again, but when the sun is debilitated, it's not so much like a kind of arrogance or a belligerence. It's actually that our individuality is pushed down a little bit. So it's almost like we might lack a little bit of confidence. We might not feel as energized. We might even feel a little sluggish in the body, even things like constipation or things like that, where it's our physicality and that vitality of the sun is kind of neutralized. But the one energy that could be kind of frustrated is this Mars in Virgo for the whole month. When Mars is in Virgo, it can be a kind of cranky, irritable, frustrated expert, critic. So you want to be careful of that energy. And again, particularly as that, from the 20th to the 27th, particularly as that aspect perfects. Mars in Virgo definitely has that sort of, again, sort of cranky critic nature, where, Mars wants to see things in a very black and white way. It's right or wrong, good or bad. You said this, then you said that, like we're ready to, defend something. And in Virgo, it's a bunch of ideas, a bunch of, hair-splitting ideas. And we're ready to defend it. Oh no, you said this and it's that, and it's not so good for Mars or Virgo energy. So you want to watch that tendency for really the whole month. And I see, some nice questions here. Kim said, thanks for the insight. It's starting to make sense. Great. Well, I have some great courses if you want to check them out at VedicAstrologyCourses.com. And you can get a lot of free classes. I'll just put I'll put a link in here too. Whoops. I'll put the link in here. Actually, there's also a link, Vedic Astrology Certification.com. Ba-ba. And even if you don't want to get certification, there's a lot of free classes. Shivakami Esther said, past my bedtime. I'll listen to this tomorrow. Thanks for posting. Well, you're probably in bed now, Shivakami Esther, because that was about a half an hour ago. So I hope you're sleeping well. Tina said, thanks for your hard work. You are welcome. Anton G said, late live. Yeah, late. So it was about 10 o'clock for me. I wanted to get it in. The day kind of slipped past. Hello from North Florida. Hello. October. Hello. You keep mentioning September. September is gone. Are we not doing October? Well, if I was saying September, then I meant October. You're right. Sorry. I can keep a lot of details straight. And sometimes, though, I get this kind of weird dyslexia about things like I'll say one instead of the other. Sorry. Yes, October. Hello from Mexico. Thank you, Sam. You're welcome. Ed Finch. Political segment was incredible. Do more, please. Hey, good. I guess you mean the political segment in this. Well, good. Or maybe previous ones. I talk about it a little bit, and it's so that people can sort of see it. It triggers some people. I did an all-political thing a couple days ago, definitely centered on the scandals and stuff like that, because we got to be able to talk, look at what we're seeing. I feel like the world is being gaslighted. Like we're all being gaslit. Like, oh, what you're seeing isn't really happening. It's perfectly normal to have things, people acting this way and saying these things and doing all this stuff, even though it's never been normal. We've never seen it before. So again, I don't want to go off on it, but yeah, I do it at risk sometimes, because people then have this idea that, well, if you're supposed to not be biased, as if speaking the truth and describing what we all see is somehow not biased, or is somehow biased. The truth is not biased. If you're saying what's going on, that's fine. So anyway, thank you for that. And bonjour, Agathe. Bonjour, ça va? Ça va, mademoiselle ou madame? And someone, are you really going to ask me? You give me your birth chart and ask me when you're going to get married. Come on. Sam from down under. Judith. Hi, Judith. Hi from Vancouver. How's it going? Okay. So we're going to leave it at that. And I hope you have a great October. If you like this, please share it with others. And you have a good night.